Have you ever felt anxious when thinking about the tasks that need to be completed today, this week, or this month? Have you ever felt like there simply is not enough time in the day to get the job done? Have you ever pushed yourself to keep working when you have felt burnt out or the quality of the work wasn't to your standard? Have there been days that you wake up with a to-do list of 100 plus items deep and you don't even know where to get started? The good news, ladies and gentlemen, is you are not alone, because myself and many people in this world have or feel this quite often. In today's podcast, I want to provide some tips on how, instead of letting this overwhelming feeling get the best of us, we can actually use it to our advantage. There is a sweet spot of urgency to get things done timely, balanced with being productive. That's optimal anxiety. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to It's the Bearded Man podcast with your favorite, the world's favorite bearded man, Bob Bay. Each week on these solo podcasts, I try to share some insight on topics to help you become the best version of yourself. Do I have all the answers? Absolutely not. This is just my bearded wisdom that I hope brings value to you. Optimal anxiety. It was just a few weeks ago that I came across this topic of optimal anxiety, and I thought it was an interesting take on how a certain amount of anxiety can actually be beneficial to us. Without it, we have no urgency to get things done timely. So what does that mean? What normally would take someone a few hours takes a few days. We become the procrastination king and queen because there is no timeline. We ultimately have no reason to be productive in our day because there is nobody pressuring us to get it done. As someone who loves getting shit done, what helps me sleep better at night is knowing that I gave the day my all. Every second counted. I did what I needed to do, and I can sleep peacefully at night knowing that. But have I had my fair share of days of being anxious, overwhelmed, and scratching my head asking, how in the world am I going to get this all done? You better believe it. Like anything in this world, you find ways to get the job done, and eventually you find strategies that help you stay efficient and effective without feeling like the whole world is resting on your shoulder to get the work done. By the end of this ep, I hope you are better prepared for that never-ending to-do list so that you too can sleep better at night and you know that you gave the day your best. As a friendly reminder, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy this podcast at any moment in time, if there's a little bit of value, if I make you laugh, if I make you smile, if you're like, damn, this bearded man sprinkling so much wisdom, I got so many notes and things that I've learned. Oh my God, if I share any amount of value to you, all that I ask, please screenshot this episode on whatever platform you're listening it to. Post it on your IG story. Tag me at Bob-A. That's B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y. And share out with the world your biggest learning, your biggest takeaway. So appreciative. Helps spread the word about this podcast like wildfire. And it also is great for me to learn and see what is helping you guys and gals and what's that benefit. Also, let's take a second to give a quick shout out that if my voice doesn't sound like it's on prime, the prime, crispy, bearded man voice, it's because we had ourselves quite a weekend, ladies and gentlemen. So we're trying to bring the voice back. No regrets. You know what I'm saying? As a Uber passenger once told me, bad decisions make for great stories. Still stand by that. But I've been trying to get my voice back. So stick with me through this episode. Tips for using optimal anxiety to our advantage. Number 1. Plan ahead and create deadlines, right? At a macro level, planning a week or month ahead while setting end of the day deadlines is going to help us know what we're supposed to be doing and when. It allows us to get a bird's eye view of what we have to do in the coming weeks. So for example, I keep a running notes tab of all the podcasts that I've recorded with the guests and the topics that I would like to discuss in the future for solo podcasts like this one. Within that tab, I plan out which podcasts are releasing when, so that as I'm going into that week, whenever that week does come, there is no question of what podcast should I drop or what topic should I cover. It's already listed in the plan and with the release date. So therefore, all I need to do is follow it. I can make adjustments if I'm not feeling a topic. Well, yeah, of course. There's guidelines. These are just guidelines to help me stay on course. And how is planning ahead beneficial? I'm not wasting any time or energy trying to figure out which podcast I should roll up that week because it's already been chosen weeks prior. Weeks. I'm also not wasting time in the day where instead I can just focus on the micro goals, which I'll get into in a second. I've taken time to think through what pod should drop and when, so that when that day gets closer, I'm not stressing about trying to figure it out. It's already in the plan, baby. Imagine that each day, right, we have 100% of energy when we wake up. Every single day, we got 100%. We have to make use of every single percent of that day and use that energy to our advantage on the things that are going to move the needle. Because I plan from a macro level, I can then plan for the work accordingly for that week leading into it. So for example, I know Mondays, that's the day to record the solo podcast. I know Tuesday, I'm editing the guest podcast. I know Wednesday, I'm prepping next week's solo pod topic. I know Thursday and Friday, I'm prepping for the next guest podcast. Instead of getting overwhelmed about all this work that needs to get done, I'm just spreading it across so that it gets done in an efficient manner. By assigning end of the day deadlines, it's allowing me to create this fire within me to get the job done and not waste any time scrolling on social media, watching YouTube videos, insert everything that gets us distracted and pulls us away from doing the actual work. And this is how optimal anxiety works to our advantage. We're creating urgency for what needs to get done during that day and the weeks and months ahead. And by doing that, we are so much more productive in our day because we know the workload is not going to stop. We know we have other tasks that need to be completed tomorrow and the day after that, but we're not worried about those yet. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Instead, today, all I'm focused on is recording this episode, prepping it, and getting it ready to hit the podcast waves. So number one, plan ahead and create deadlines. Number two, create a rocks and sand list. I've talked about this concept in detail on episode 73, but I think it is worth discussing again. Creating our rocks and sand list allows us to keep a running tab on what is the priority in this very moment. So like I said, as I record this, I'm giving this pod every ounce of energy and attention that I've got. I'm not thinking about yesterday. I'm not worried about tomorrow. All I'm focused on right now is this moment. The idea is this, though, for this rocks and sand list. If you had a cup, rocks, and sand, you have three things. The most efficient way to fill both of them up in that cup is by placing the rocks in first and then pouring the sand. If you did the reverse, if the sand went in and filled up the bottom, and then you put the rocks in, the rocks may peek out over the top of the cup. And with that being said, we want to complete our rocks, our top priorities first before we waste any time with the sand, our not so urgent to-do list items. So we talked about how important it is to plan ahead and create deadlines at a macro level, and having this rocks and sand list is going to help us make decisions in the micro day-to-day level. So for example, if it's Tuesday, I know my rock will be to edit the podcast with the guests for that following week, right? That includes re-listening to the entire app, writing out show notes, finalizing the audio, uploading it to my podcast distribution, sending the clip to my editor for the social asset, etc., etc. I'm going to put each of these steps at a higher priority than the emails that come inbound and that I know can wait and be responded to the next day. Or I'm also going to wait if somebody sends me a text that says, yo, Bob, baby, you're the man, you got to check out this video on YouTube. I'm going to go, hey, pump the brakes, brother. I got some stuff I got to focus on, and then I'm going to get to that YouTube video. But by doing this, it just helps us be so much more efficient. I know my rocks going into the day ahead of me, and I just need to make sure that I get that job done first before putting any time and energy on other items. The optimal anxiety steps in once again to create this pressure within me to get the task done before the end of the day. And the reason it's optimal is because I've learned what I can do realistically in a day. Where there are days in the past that I stacked way too much on that to-do list, you better believe it. And by the end of the day, I would feel like I got nothing done because the list was way too overwhelming and I didn't know what to do and when. But with trial and error, I've learned and I understand what I'm actually capable of completing while balancing a full-time job with Liquid IV. So I've set myself up for success by setting realistic daily goals, right? Rome was not built in a day, and neither are our dreams, ladies and gentlemen. We need to spread the workflow across evenly. We have to do that. Creating your daily rocks and sand list allows us to stay focused on what is important, the rocks, while acknowledging the other items that we need to get done, the sand that we can complete at a later time. By doing so, we create optimal anxiety within us to get work done that day. So number 2, create a rocks and sand list. If you want to listen to that podcast in more depth, go to episode 73. And number 3, pick up where you left off. I didn't have any balance for the first 3 years of my podcast career. No question about it. I was driving Uber full time to fund my creative projects. I was stepping into this creative space for the first time, so I felt like I had so much to prove to myself, but also to the world. I was this bearded man from Massachusetts with a vision. And to me, I was like, ain't no mountain high enough for this guy. I'm going to keep putting in that work. #hustle, #get after it. Balance did not exist for those first couple years of my creative career. And I think that's a story for most people when they are getting started with something new. You just want to execute and speed things up as fast as possible. But at some point, there's a switch. There, of course, is always going to be more room for growth, more work that needs to get done, but we become less anxious about moving the needle daily because we've been doing it for so long, for such an extended period of time, right? So we have a resume to showcase our work. We know the value that we can bring. We're not anxious trying to prove to the world that we have it within us. We've been doing something for an extended period of time. We know we've been putting in the reps. And we understand that success comes from us stacking up our small daily wins over a long period of time, brick by brick every single day. Since late 2019, I've gotten much better at listening to myself and not stretching myself too thin. So as soon as I feel like I'm sacrificing the quality of the work just to get it done, I stop. I walk away and I come back in a few hours or maybe the next day. And I know that I can always pick up right where I left off because I always do. And the beauty of stepping away from the work is that we come back refreshed and we see things from a different lens. We refuel our energy back up to that 100%. And I used to, for example, like I used to prep these solo pod topics that I, release weekly. I used to prep it the morning of the day that I would record them. And then I realized how much better they were when I put a few days into them. Not saying that I spent 8 hours a day making every word and every sentence count, but coming back to the work the next day, I always found myself making adjustments. Even if they were minor tweaks or a little change in the way I was delivering what I wanted to say, it made a difference. So part of creating optimal anxiety within our lives not only allows us to stay productive, but it also allows us to be okay with stepping away and picking up where we left off. Very, very important. There will always be more work that needs to get done. It's a fact of the matter. The sooner we accept this, the sooner we can be less critical on how much we expect to get done in a day. As my boy Bill Gates once said, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Step away from the work when needed. There is always tomorrow. So number 3, pick up where you left off. To recap, we've all felt anxiety at some point in our lives for the work that needs to get done in the day, week, or month ahead. The key is breaking down these items in a macro and micro level so we can complete everything in a timely manner. The best way to ensure that we are productive is by creating an optimal amount of anxiety so that we have a sense of urgency to get the work done timely. Tips for using optimal anxiety to our advantage. Number 1, plan ahead and create deadlines. At a macro level, Planning for the weeks ahead is going to help us know what we're supposed to be doing and when, and it gives us a bird's eye view of what to expect in the future. Number 2, create a rocks and sand list. At a micro level, our rocks and sand list allows us to complete daily tasks efficiently. By separating our rocks, our top priorities, from our sand, our not so urgent tasks, we can prioritize which task to complete now and which to finish later. And number 3, pick up where you left off. There will always be more work that needs to get done. Set realistic expectations for what you can do in the day ahead and stop when you feel you've given that 24 hours everything you've got. You can pick up right where you left off tomorrow. Challenge for the listeners. Do you feel extremely overwhelmed with the amount of work that is ahead of you? Or do you feel completely frozen and not sure where to start? Create optimal anxiety within your life by breaking down what you need to do and when, and break it down by the day, the week, and the month. It will help you stay productive on a micro level, and it will help you crash tasks at a macro level. Do it today. It will be worth it. Questions from the BMC. That is the Bearded Man community. If you're just joining now for the first episode, first time listening, welcome to the community. You're officially a member. Costs you $0 per month. I say the same thing every week, and we all understand that. So welcome to the BMC. This is coming from Joshua. Strategies to grapple with decision-making when suffering from anxiety. The best thing that I've always done when having to make a decision and just unsure which way to go, create a pros and cons list, right? That can help you see visually the different decisions and what's the pros and what's the cons. Also, walk away from that list and revisit it at another time, similar like I was talking about before. Don't just expect to make the decision in one single second. If you have the ability to walk away and come back to it, let it sit, let it marinate, and then revisit it. And then just remember that no matter what decision you do make, it will take you to another decision. And what I mean by that is no matter the way the cards play out, don't ever beat yourself up and go, I should have chose the other option, but I didn't. There's no point in allowing yourself to dig into that mental rabbit hole of what you could have, should have. It doesn't matter. Now it's about continue to look and move forward and take what you've learned and keep moving. But it's just this constant, I think life is just a constant journey of us making decisions and pivoting and making more decisions. But always, always, always look forward. But ultimately, Josh, I think creating a pros and cons list will be extremely helpful. Connor H., what's the best way to channel it? Channel anxiety. Lean into it. Make it work to your advantage. Let it add fuel to the fire inside you. And I think the best way to channel it is channel it by focusing in on the 1 to 3 small wins you can get under your belt today. Once again, it's important to understand the macro level, what we want to do in the big picture, but realistically, be honest with yourself. What can you do today? I've talked about this many times on podcasts previously. Every day, I put my 2 feet on the ground and I say out loud like a crazy person, focus on the 24 hours in front of you. And to me, that is a daily reminder. I can only control what is in front of me this day. So I think the best way to channel it, focus on the 1 to 3 small wins you can get under your belt today. Third and final question coming from Connor R. A lot of Connors chiming in on this podcast today. Professional versus personal. My anxiety can help drive at work, but it can be crippling at home. So if it helps, this is my take, Connor. If it helps drive you at work, I'm willing to bet it can drive you at home. And when you say home, I don't know if you mean in the sense of like your personal life, or if you're talking about like you love working hard at work, and then when you get home, you start to get anxiety because you're not working. So I'm not sure which way you're leaning on that, but I think ultimately think macro, where you want to go, and then think micro, once again, what you can do today that will help you get there. Also, when the job is done for the day, let that be like it. Stop, like compartmentalize and only focus on what is in front of you right now. So if what you're hinting at is saying the anxiety works for you when you're working, and then maybe it kind of hurts you when you're home because you do want to be working, know that there's always tomorrow, like I was talking about before. So I hope that's helpful. And compartmentalize in the sense of if you just got home after a long day, don't let thoughts about work from today get to you, and don't start getting anxious and worrying about tomorrow. Focus on being on that couch, enjoying Netflix, enjoying what you are doing in this very moment at home, because tomorrow you'll get right back to where you were and where you left off with work. Pod review of the week. We did not have a review of the week. It's okay. No big problem. We're still about 40 short from hitting 100 before we get to episode 100. That's coming up real quick. So if any of you beautiful folks want to be the pod review of the week, head over to the iTunes podcast app and leave us a review. If you're not listening on iTunes, just make sure that whatever platform you are listening to, you're subscribed on iTunes, you follow us on Spotify. All those analytics help, and it's very, very much appreciated. If you enjoyed this podcast today, if there was any amount of tidbit that, you know what, you're like, the bearded man provided some wisdom, he provided some value today, there was a learning for me. All that I ask, screenshot this episode, whatever platform you're listening to, post it to your IG story, tag me at Babe, B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y, and let me know what was the biggest learning. Super curious, and it gives me good insight as to which episodes resonate the most with people, and definitely gives me a better understanding of what the next episodes should be about and what the focus should be. That is it for today's episode 89, Optimal Anxiety, Creating Pressure That Leads to Productivity. I think it is a balance of creating a little fire under our ass to get certain things done per day, but also being realistic about what you can get done in a day and not overworking yourself. So I hope this was enjoyable, and I hope you guys and gals enjoyed it. Thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. It truthfully means the world. I know there are so many podcasts out there in this world, but the fact that you're listening to my bearded voice right now gets me fired up. Just know a lot more content on the way. It's the Bearded Man Podcast. We will see you beautiful folks soon enough. See ya.